And Tim sharing with us, once again, that theme, it's bubbling up, building each other up and sense of autonomy and making each other feel better and keeping each other strong seems to have better outcomes. And somebody who knows all about keeping an organisation strong, big subject we're going to unpack here now, Alistair Faulkner.
Nice to meet you.
From Darwinium.
Hello.
Has joined us. Thank you so much, Alistair.
Pleasure, thank you.
You're reminding me of, our previous presenter saying that, black T-shirt, less decisions in the mornings. Is that your go-to as well?
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. You've got the logo, easy to get dressed, wear the same thing every day.
All right, this could be the hot tip out there for, budding entrepreneurs. Just think about the black T-shirt. Gives you more time in the day. Alistair, you are an expert in online fraud, cybercrime and identity theft. You're also CEO and co-founder of Darwinium, the next evolution in continuous digital risk protection for growing businesses. Now, prior to that, you were Chief Products Officer at Threat Metrics.
Yes, that's right.
And that was acquired by RELX, and I don't know who they are.
Yeah, yep.
For
Relics.
What is it?
Yeah, they're a FTSE 50 company, but basically they own a conglomerate of multiple businesses. But
okay, and they also had $830 million US in 2018 to acquire.
Yes.
Threat Metrics. Could you tell us a little bit about Threat Metrics first?
Sure. So Threat Metrics is addressing the problem of online fraud, and so that's essentially whenever you log into your bank account, someone's trying to steal your username and password.
Apparently, yes.
If you're trying to do a credit card transaction, someone might have stolen your credit card and used that instead of, the real person, essentially.
Yep.
And so we're really trying to address online fraud because it had gone, I guess, exponentially worse as the internet happened, and then as you had data breaches and people's identities were just littered around like debris on the internet. Unfortunately, state-sponsored actors, crime groups, criminal gangs, sometimes so-called script kiddies, are taking those identities and using them typically without people knowing that those identities have been used until it's too late, until you get that charge, that charge on your credit card, until the bank tells you that your funds have been drained from your bank account, and it's a real problem. And Threat Metrics was started to address that issue. And what we did was take a new approach to solving fraud online. Effectively, what we built was kind of like a spam detection. Everyone knows spam in the email. Like, why is my email not full of spam all the time? Well, there's a thing called spam detection. We built that for identities on the internet, kind of like knowing that, hey, this computer is pretending they're in Australia. They've got Alistair Faulkner's credit card, but something suspicious here. The time zone on that machine looks like it's in Russia. Let's just choose a topical country for the moment.
Yes, let's go all the way there.
Their IP address looks like it's in Australia, but we actually really know that they're connecting from a different country. And actually that computer we've seen using 20 different identities in the last minute, not just at your website or not just at their website, but across the globe. And so it's really taking that approach of being able to provide additional digital intelligence to make a transaction safer, which is great. It keeps users protected without them needing to lift a finger. And it keeps businesses protected because obviously you have less fraud, less money going out. But actually, just as importantly, it enables you to create frictionless experiences.
You've explained that so well, because just before we came on air together, I'm like, oh boy, I know we have a lot of technical savvy entrepreneurs, part of our speakers and out there, but this is such a big piece. And it sounds like the evolution of fraud and threat is never going to end. So really your world is constantly discovering where the next crack is, correct?
Yeah, absolutely. And so everyone's become familiar with data breaches, but no one's really thinking about where do those identities go. And it's a little bit like right now the focus whenever there's a data breach, someone says, hey, here's a credit report monitoring, or here's an identity monitoring service, which is really not helping the consumer at all.
It sounds like it's after the fact.
Exactly. And so what would happen if, someone broke in and stole your keys? Well, the first thing you do is you change the locks on the door.
Yeah.
And so that's effectively what Threat Metrics and now Darwinium helps you to do, is to connect basically, without having to replace the whole house, change the door, effectively give businesses ways to protect their home or protect their businesses, their data, without inconveniencing customers. Because there's a very easy way you can stop fraud, and that's stop doing business online. But it's obviously not very effective.
Not practical.
And so where Darwinium comes about in an evolutionary perspective from ThreatMetrix is this idea that you need to be able to continuously profile and continuously understand every customer interaction. So the evidence of that when you're dealing with a company that hasn't really thought about the entire user's journey and stitching together every single interaction, you'll feel things like you get interrupted with two-factor authentication when you least remember it, or you log onto the website that you go to every week to do your payroll, let's say, and it doesn't recognize you and you have to go through a full loop. Or you try and do a transaction online and they say, we'll send you a text message, it never arrives. You know, all of these things are businesses trying to do the right thing, but there's just too many hurdles.
And there is too many. I mean, it's decisions, you know, forget about the black T-shirt in the morning. It is. It can be exhausting.
Exactly.
The number of passwords and things you have to remember, especially if you're not using it every day. So talking more about Darwinium, and which you've touched on, you're customer-centric in your approach, and you talk about dynamically to orchestrate journeys, and you're tailoring digital experiences. So clearly you're passionate. You're passionate about the user experience. Yes,
That's right. Okay. And what people don't appreciate behind the scenes, and the reason why, you know, ThreatMetrix was successful was that, you know, we were able to help large organisations which are dealing with large roadmaps, you know, lots of different departments and divisions, you know, and often you have somebody who's at the front door who's checking to see, hey, is Alisdair who's signing up for this service, is he really Alisdair? They're a completely different department, completely different technology stack to the person who's trying to authenticate you, that's saying, is this the Alisdair that signed up? He probably doesn't even know, you know, if they're not connected to the same databases. And then when you go to do a payment, that could be a completely different vendor, a completely different system that's now trying to figure out who you are. And that's what we mean by orchestrating customer journeys, is that we give businesses a seamless digital experience. It helps them understand a customer as they're interacting with the site. It gives them greater confidence to either stop a transaction or in 99% of the cases, step out of the way so that customer has a frictionless experience.
So it's one portal for your client, really.
Yeah, one decision engine that helps you make those that finesse interaction to say, you know what, maybe we shouldn't challenge this customer. You know, they've been shopping with us, you know, multiple times. Okay, we haven't seen them for a month or something like that, but you know, why are we going to challenge them with a two-factor authentication? So the flip side, actually, so the moral to the story, and so one of the missions of ThreatMetrix is to protect those who can least protect themselves. And the benefit for businesses that optimize fraud and user experience and security well is actually increased revenue. That's actually, you know, it's not about a revenue-denying department. If you have better insights, you give customers better user experience, you get out of their way, and revenue grows. And that's ultimately why, you know, Darwinium and...
It's true, isn't it? It you know, return business, all that type of thing. So, Alisdair, you were based in the US and you still have offices there, I believe, but primarily have been in Sydney. In terms of starting up in Sydney, what are the benefits that you see for startups in comparison to anywhere else in the world?
Well, it's a good question. So, I mean, this is
this is a good start.
It's a great start. You know, I used to say, and look, no, I don't want to offend any of my American friends, but you know, I used to joke that Palo Alto and Silicon Valley, it's beautiful, it's nice. I think nice is probably the best descriptor of it. You know, but the problem is there, if you're Mark Zuckerberg or you're a billionaire, you have to live there. You know, like that's, you know, it's nice, but it's not Bondi. It's not the beach. It's not the community. It's not that sense of connection with nature, and it's not that. It's just a different side of the world. You know, so what's that joke about the difference between Sydney-siders and Melbourneites? You know,
which joke?
Which joke? Well, you know, the one, I've lived in both cities, by the way, but like in Melbourne, the joke is, you know, that people like to have dinner parties and discuss the meaning of life. In Sydney, they have those dinner parties, but they already know the meaning of life is a view of the harbour. And
That's a good one. That's a good one.
and here it's like rather than looking at a harbour bridge,
Yeah.
I'd much prefer to be near the ocean.
So really, you've got the best of both worlds. In
Absolutely.
terms of you've got US for your work, and then you've got Sydney here. And what about though? I suppose raising capital and so forth. Australia versus US.
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really changed. The scene has very much changed in Australia. When ThreatMetrix was first getting started, my first business before that, which was a networking technology company, people didn't know, what options agreements were. There wasn't as much venture capital as there was, and the thing about venture capital and entrepreneurship and startups is actually the ecosystem isn't driven by venture per se, it's driven by entrepreneurs who have a successful business and either they or their employees start again. And so you have a maturity actually in the entrepreneurs, which then attracts the capital. And so companies like Atlassian obviously, were major influence in terms of local capital market. Canva and other, unicorns. There's just so many being created. Secure Code Warrior, more than I could count. But basically, the innovation system in Australia in the last 10 years has just exploded. And so, when it comes to people and talent, Australia also has a really special place in that we have great universities. Salaries are still reasonable. You're not having people job hunt, every 6 months hopping like happens in the Silicon Valley. And
there's probably an element of culture, coming up through some of these services and ideas as well that might be different from other countries.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things, if you look at Atlassian and Canva and others, they're typically what's called examples of product-led startups or product-led growth. And so from Australia, that's a huge advantage. You find that there are a lot of SaaS businesses run by very successful Australian entrepreneurs because of our isolation, you can't necessarily have to rely on expensive sales forces that you have to hire overseas to get to market. And so I think Australia has had a really good example where you have build products that help sell themselves, and their customers recommend you to other customers. And Canva and Atlassian are obviously really good examples of that. So in Australia, you could do that, just as well or better than any other place.
See, you don't have to leave Australia, girls and boys. You can stay here and keep innovating. Now, as a technology entrepreneur, I imagine you spend a lot of time online and in front of computers. So how do you get a balance in your day? And what does a typical day look like for you?
Typical day actually is me coming here to Icebergs. I'm a member. And so, I'll go for a swim or I'll run on the beach or...
And then go home and
for
put your black T-shirt on.
Yeah, put the black T-shirt on, exactly. So you'll find me here most days. But it's meditation, it's your family, home is where the heart is. And my beautiful wife and wonderful girls, Stella and Freya, keep me grounded. And it's basically, I think the previous speaker was talking about meditation, but it's just really... the number one thing that you're trying to manage really, as opposed to a business and people, but it's your own internal psychology.
Yes. Yeah, it is absolutely a priority, isn't it? To well-being and to thinking better and making better decisions, clearly. And also maintaining confidence. Do you think you need a lot of confidence to do what you do? I mean...
Or stupidity or insanity. It's often... we've all dealt with a lot of people that confidence does not necessarily correlate with expertise.
That's true. Well, there's overconfidence and I guess there's quiet confidence. No,
I think it's, I think Elon Musk said, he's fearless. He's not. He said he feels, he has acute sense of fear. And I think many entrepreneurs do. You just do anyway because you're driven by something. There's something in you that...
Maybe the fear drives you.
Perhaps it does, but I don't think actually fear doesn't tend to drive. It's more love and seeing something brought into the world that makes it better. And I think I'm happiest, and many are, when I'm creating the future. And seeing that there is a better way to get stuff done. I mean, I'm an engineer by education, and where you wake up with a problem. For me, there are things that keep me up at night, actually, is what happens when, we're currently in a military conflict in Europe, as, we're all aware of Ukraine and others. There's a hot-cold war, a hot-cold cyber war, which is raging, irrespective. So as opposed to kinetic wars, which are fought by tanks and people and planes, cyber warfare is ongoing, continuous, and it's happening under the covers that many people aren't aware about. And so if we want to deliver, and this, I'm very passionate about this, if we want to deliver on the promise of the internet to improve the lives of all people, then we need to have mechanisms in place to keep that internet safe and protect those who can least protect themselves. And if we don't do it, I don't know who is. And if we don't use our expertise and our luck and our education that we have and the capital and the money that we have in Australia and globally to deal with this problem, I don't know who will. And you can be sure that our adversaries are thinking about this constantly. And where things are changing in the next decade, so the first thing I had to deal with threat metrics, the journey there was, what happens when you deal with scripts and bots which can take the stolen identities and automate these attacks? When I first started, Threat Metrics was founded by David Jones, should make sure to call out there, fantastic Sydney entrepreneur. When we first started, online fraud attacks were maybe 1 in every 100 transactions. By the time we finished Threat Metrics, and still ongoing, if you're doing a login or protecting your login at, say, a retailer where you put your email in, 99% of all those authentication attempts is someone trying to pretend to be you without your knowledge. 99%. So now imagine now that 99% of all interactions are actually some kind of bot or automated machine. How do you defend yourself in that world? And now imagine that you've got AI, and as you don't have to imagine too hard, I can take 60 seconds, someone can take my voice as I'm speaking now and replicate to be me. They can sound like me, they can take a video now with this video and effectively be Alisdair online. And are we ready for that reality? We've seen it in misinformation, in terms of misinformation warfare, that this is obviously a real issue, right? But then what happens when it actually comes down to someone pretending to be your mum on the phone? How do we protect ourselves against that?
So I'm assuming there's quite a few industry roundtables sitting down talking about, because this future, is this 12 months, is this 5 years, is this 10 years?
It's happening now. It's happening now, but there will be, in the next 10 years, an acceleration of AI being applied to mimic us online at all times. Right now it's very kind of focused and targeted. So if I'm a fraudster, I'm probably going to target the CEO of a bank, somewhere where I can be profitable. But inevitably that technology just drifts down, where you have more and more people able to do more and more sophisticated things.
So there's such a positive there where we can virtually have our own avatar and a hologram somewhere,
Exactly.
But then the negative is that someone is imitating us.
I mean, many of these mimicking technologies, like someone being able to record your voice and that kind of thing and mimic you, are actually for good purpose. For people who've lost their voice, need to replace the larynx for an operation or something like that, they can have their voice back.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it means someone can have your voice as well, which is the scary world that we're moving into.
Some fire chat. This is heavens.
There's all good news.
Good
news, by the way, Darwinium.
Good news. Yeah, the scary. Well, the good news is you're on it.
Yeah.
So someone's got to be, thinking about these, really hard and uncomfortable questions and realities that the majority of us mere mortals I just won't look there. I don't want to look there. We're all mere mortals, I can assure you of that. Yeah. And a really interesting thing in your world in risk, I think, is sometimes it's, focus on what you want to see happen.
Yeah.
Which can sometimes apply. I'm not going to think about the negative. But in actual fact, your job is to be constantly looking for the cracks.
Yeah.
Constantly. Yeah. Well, whether you call it a risk or a negative, but it's not usually on the happy side.
Yeah, for me, I'd say, I always joke, I'm probably the most risk-averse entrepreneur you've ever met, in the sense that, you're right, most good entrepreneurs are actually good at tackling risk and taking on risk, but eliminating risk.
Yeah.
And that's essentially what my job is as you build a product and as you go to market and as you serve customers, it's just how do you eliminate risk at every step of the way so that you can have something that grows and thrives.
Yeah. We have got one more question here, I think. A couple more coming. What has been your biggest aha moment in business, something that you wish you could have told yourself starting out, what would have made life easier for you?
Oh, geez, how deep do I go, or how surface level?
You can go deep for 57 seconds.
No, actually, a great aha moment for me was seeing a guy, Steve Blank, who's a famous Silicon Valley author and entrepreneur in his own right. And he had this, I was lucky enough to go to Berkeley, where they had these education courses where he's teaching 4 steps of the epiphany, essentially. But the aha moment, which is so obvious, but it's about the sooner you're engaged with your customers to develop a product, there's 2 strains to a business. One is you've got to develop the product, and then you've got to develop your customer sales life cycle. You've got to understand your customer. How do they like to buy? What are the things that they need? What's the teams you need in place to serve their needs? And so that customer development journey, when I was doing my first startup, was like, oh, geez, I wish I'd, talked to more customers earlier before you had the whole thing built and realised that it didn't.
See, this is where it comes up. You've got all this expertise, obviously, across risk, fraud, technology, but your whole breadth of experience now includes sales, marketing, strategy, life cycle. So would you agree, as some of our other speakers have said, yes, you need to be on point and know a little bit about a lot of every component of your business? Yeah,
exactly. But you're exactly right. You have to understand the detail where it's going, but you need to have a team around you that supports your weaknesses, where you're weak, your blind spots, and so we all have them. We're all mere mortals, and so I'm lucky that Darwinium is co-founded by some of the original people that built Threat Metrics, and I have some of the best team that keeps me on point and on track. It's fantastic.
I can't believe this has flown so fast talking to you. Just absolutely fascinating, this world that you're in. So, Alistair Faulkner.
Thank you.
From Darwinium. Thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And all the best to you and your beautiful little girls.
Thank you very much.
And keeping us all safe. Could you keep up the good work, please?
Thank you. Take care.
All right.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.